Hi everyone, my name is Katelyn Decraene and I am the Cloud Finance Manager here from Morningstar. I've been with Morningstar for 3.5 years and I've have just been in this role for a little over, almost about a year now. Today I'm going to talk to you guys just a little bit about some of the best practices and governance processes that we've put in place here to kind of make sure that we're managing our costs and optimizing in the cloud. This is just kind of a quick agenda, give you guys a little background just about Morningstar, talk about our journey, then I'll go into more detail about our governance process, and then talk about a new thing that we just rolled out this year, which is the cost star rating, and any questions you guys have. So I'm sure most of you guys are familiar with Morningstar, but I just want to make sure that this is not the vegetarian food company Morningstar. We are an independent investment research company. We focus on using a lot of our core competencies in data and research to create products and solutions for various investors. So our public cloud journey, we started this really in early 2017, before cloud, and at that time, our on-prem footprint, we had 11 data centers globally and over 11,000 servers. And to kind of kick that off, we had a public cloud COE, Center of Excellence, and I was part of that. That's kind of how I got involved. Other members of that were just different representatives from areas of the business, and together we kind of worked to put together what our program vision was going to be and then our strategy to kind of get there. So I'll share that with you guys. So essentially, our vision for the cloud program at Morningstar was to really leverage cloud technologies to allow Morningstar to own and operate minimum amount of infrastructure to make sure that we increase our speed to market, support quick entry into emerging markets, support maximum client uptime, and then make sure that we have an efficient and transparent cost structure to allow us to move nimbly into the future. So with our vision in place, this is kind of what we came up with, or some of the 4 key components of our cloud strategy to make sure that we get there. First thing, data center consolidations. So we wanted to make sure that we were offsetting costs by aligning any of our migrations to any times where a data center required a hardware refresh. The next component, building on the foundation. We wanted to make sure that we had a strong foundation in place to make sure that we can successfully adopt public cloud here at Morningstar. Third piece here, data first. So we wanted to make sure that our core data systems were available so that products could leverage those in the cloud. And then fourth piece here, cloud native. So that is just making sure that anything new that we build is really just leveraging all of the capabilities in cloud and that we're optimizing from the start. So just to give you guys a little update on where we've come since we started our journey. So far, well, at the end of this year, we'll have retired 3 data centers. We've already reduced our on-prem server count by 3,000. We have a full-time dedicated cloud services team, which I am now a part of, and we have over 600 accounts in AWS. To give you guys a little more detail around this, 120 of those are team accounts where they're actually creating, developing products. Then we have an additional about 480 accounts that are actually individual accounts that we give out to Morningstar employees, and this is really to just give them the opportunity to go into AWS, gain familiarity with the console before they kind of get in there. So next, I'm going to talk to you guys just a little bit about our financial governance process. One of the things that we did do a good job, I think, of is just recognizing that and being proactive about knowing there's a need for cost management in the cloud early on. That doesn't mean that we haven't had our challenges. So a couple of things that I just thought I'd highlight are areas that we're really working on. Cost awareness and continuous monitoring. I think teams have gotten better about just general awareness of costs. Now it's really making sure that understanding that in order to successfully adopt cloud and manage costs, that this is a continuous process, it doesn't just end. The next thing, adopting a cloud mindset. We're still over provisioning resources in the cloud. So remembering that we don't need to provision things to, based on what we think our future needs are and matching supply and demand. Third thing, we're really bad at estimating. We tend to overestimate what projects or initiatives are going to cost. Some people think this is a good thing, which are a good problem to have, but at the same time, it's also, opportunity of budget that we could have given to another initiative. And then the last piece, the fourth piece, is just budgeting and forecasting agility. As we just touched on, the budgeting process is going on right now, and we can't really just plan everything that we need. So we've had to make some adjustments to be able to, fund initiatives as they come up and really be agile like the cloud. So some of the just kind of key foundational things that we've established here that have really helped us, build a strong foundation. And I'll go into more details on this here in a second, is just we have a financial governance process for how we actually approve spend in the cloud. We're doing quarterly business reviews, cost champions, which is part of the FinOps kind of model, and then training and awareness. So going a little more into detail about our financial governance process, we took a new approach this year in 2019 where we budgeted and reforecasted for all the existing initiatives that were approved, and then we had a separate reserve pool that we had kind of set aside for funding, and we established a governance committee that meets on a monthly basis to kind of govern how that funding is divvied out for initiatives. In order for an initiative to be funded or for a team to work on something, they have to create a business case. This business case, they'll fill it out and then they'll submit it to myself and Tony, who's our Director of Cloud Services. He does a technical review, and then I do a financial review of this. My financial review really entails if the team is already active in the cloud, is their current spend optimized, or can they optimize further to find efficiencies and be able to fund this initiative through that? If they are not active, then it's making sure that that they're optimizing from the start. Some of the good things that I think have come from this business case template process is just, again, highlighting on some of these same points, just making sure that technologists and the teams are understanding the cost drivers and the associated ramp up. And the second biggest thing is just documenting assumptions, really making sure that we're getting better at this. But this is, I think, key to helping us with kind of understanding what our driver is behind over forecasting. Did we either really, overestimate what it actually costs, or is it more of a timeline thing or assumptions that we had kind of put in? So it's just been helpful, and again, one thing we're really working on. So once the business case goes through our check, the P&L lead will then pitch that at the next governance meeting, which we hold on a monthly basis. Again, so the key stakeholders that are involved in this are CFO, CIO, CTO, all of the P&L leads, and then tech leads. There may be more than one that roll up under specific P&L. And then they'll either get approved or there'll be follow-up actions. And we'll kind of, yep. It's in the hundreds of thousands.
1, 2, 3, 10.
About 5.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next big, foundational item that we started this a little bit last year, but we've done a good job of making sure that we're sticking with it, is quarterly business reviews that we hold with each of the P&Ls and all the tech teams under that P&L. Biggest things, again, here is just keeping open communication channels between finance, cloud services team, and the tech teams. It's a couple things that we highlight, looking at how actuals versus budget are trending to date, making sure that we talk about any big variances that we're seeing. Again, this is just going back to continuously keeping costs in mind. Other things that we'll do is if I pull some reports together, if there's anything that I see where just specific services or trends, try to highlight that to make sure that the teams expected that, it's in line with what they thought. And then the last piece of that is just giving any suggestions for optimization potential if we have. What was that? Tagging? Which just specifically with regards to?
From an operational perspective, all that has to get represented
So we,
how is that handled?
so right now our account structure is all based on the team accounts. So I'm showing that back to teams at that level. We have some tagging in place and we have a standard, but that hasn't been fully enforced yet. So a lot of this is just at the team level and in order to get more granularity on the initiative that they're working on, that's where we'll get that with tagging. But right now I'm surfacing this level back by team and their account. So each team has 2 accounts, 1 prod, 1 non-prod account. Last 2 kind of big foundational items I'm going to touch on, cost champions. Again, this kind of goes with adopting a FinOps operating model. We did a little POC with 2 of our tech teams. This is still in its kind of infancy, and we're working on adopting that. And really, the key things we've been focusing on here is getting the FAs that support the P&Ls and kind of encouraging and collaboration between them and the technologists to make sure that there's good knowledge sharing between those 2. And then the last piece here, just cost optimization is part of the AWS architecture framework, cost pillars. And so we have an existing architecture office and architecture champions, and we're trying to kind of make sure that we somehow incorporate that into the processes that are existing today here at Morningstar. Last piece, training and awareness. Don't underestimate this. We have Tech Tuesdays, so on Tuesdays of the month, around lunchtime, we will do just kind of sign-up sessions to just do knowledge sharing. And I did 1 session during one of these to just kind of go over the basic cost optimization pillars for AWS. Next month, our bill went down $12K. So just don't underestimate little bits of training here and there and that knowledge. So with our foundation, our governance process in place, and it's kind of a strong foundation there, we've really been able to kind of shift gears and really focus on driving cost optimization. One of the biggest things here and challenges is just removing the stigma around cost optimization. A lot of times people hear cost optimization and they think cost cutting, and so it's trying to change that mindset and realizing that this is more just about opportunity and the value of every single dollar that we're putting in the cloud versus, trying to save, cut costs somewhere. A couple things that we're doing this year to really drive the optimization. So we've set targets. We set targets at the team level, and we are 82% to that goal to date. We also had an RI coverage target, so we want to get to 60% across the company. We've met that goal, so now we are setting the bar higher, and we want to meet 70% by the end of the year. Training and awareness, again, just keep continuing this. And then the last part, which I'm going to go into more detail here and that we're really excited about, is the cost star rating. All right, so cost star rating, what is it? There's a lot of metrics out there. We needed to find a way to be able to surface these and to give teams just basically an understanding of, in a way to benchmark, score them on how well they are actually optimizing in the cloud. So that's kind of the whole concept behind the cost star rating. This snippet up here is something that is incorporated into a weekly product scorecard that goes out to teams that was already existing. So we've added that now in there. And then our rating it's a 5-star scale rating. So if you get a 5-star, you're doing really well. If you have 3, you're doing okay. 1, there's maybe some area for improvement. Just to give a little more clarity behind the product scorecard, this is not to be mixed up with any of our Morningstar ratings. This is just internally used, and it is generated and calculated by Brinko, which is cybersecurity risk management. essentially what this was just a way for us to be able to measure security, DR, and operational readiness of our products and kind of score teams. So we've incorporated this as part of that. And again, like I said, sent to teams on a weekly basis. This is an example on the side just so you guys see what a team would get. So methodology behind this, we made sure that we had a good working group with stakeholders that represented different areas of the business to make sure that the methodology that we came up with was actually reasonable and something we could apply across all teams. A lot of this is really based on research and resources of AWS best practices, one of which is Trusted Advisor. For those of you who aren't familiar with Trusted Advisor, this is just kind of a cloud or an AWS native tool, basically gives recommendations and best practices on to improve performance, reliability, security, and then cost. On the left-hand side, you'll see these are just an example of all the checks that are done through Trusted Advisor, just for reference. So the actual methodology, how do we go about determining how these ratings and how teams are scored? First thing that we did was we grouped all of our AWS services into opportunity tiers. So basically what we wanted to do is identify which services we felt we could get the most optimization potential out of. Tier 1, EC2, and UBS and RDS, some of the biggest, I guess, drivers in terms of cost on our bill. So those were tier 1 because we felt like there was those were good areas to tackle and there was a lot of opportunity. So once we had those identified, the next thing that we did was we established metrics to be able to identify any resources that we could potentially optimize, and we would assign a severity to them. So I gave an example here, and which could be customized, but if there was an EC2 instance where the average CPU is less than, let's say, 5% per week, and the maximum CPU is less than 20% in a week, I'll go into more detail on it in a second, but essentially that would be something we'd think that you could optimize more, and we would just kind of assign a severity, critical, medium, high, or low, based on the different thresholds that we're using. Then the overall rating is actually determined based on the number of tickets or issues, optimization potential that we identified, and then the severity of those issues. So an example, to put this into context, a team would get a 1-star if, let's say, they had at least, we determined, 1 or 2 critical severity tickets or issues, or if they had more than, let's say, 10 high severity tickets. So this is just kind of the basic methodology behind the rating. As I said, this is still in its infancy. We just rolled this out at the end of July. We're kind of doing a phased approach. So the first phase is where we're at right now. And again, like I said, this is really focusing on EC2, EBS, and RDS utilization. Phase 2, we're hoping to kick off soon, and that's where we're going to maybe look at targeting RI coverage, getting in some methodology, metrics around budget versus actuals, kind of scoring teams on that, and then tagging. Really want to make sure that we're getting good coverage and tagging all of our resources based on the standards that we've identified here at Morningstar. The toolkit. So how do we get all this information? We have an in-house scanning engine and a cloud services API that we use. Trusted Advisor right now is our data source. We want to be able to leverage other data sources in the future. This is just the one we're using at the moment. We use JIRA to track our issues. Essentially, that's just creating tickets for any of those optimization checks that our scanner identifies. Brinka then takes that, does the actual rating calculation, and then also is what we use to leverage and kind of surface this information through the product scorecards. So breaking it down, and essentially we have our cost scanner that plugs into Trusted Advisor, scanning for those checks that we determined. Anything that it identifies will then be filtered into JIRA, where there's different tickets that are created, and then based on the findings, we have the severity level also that's being fed into that and assigned. Then that all information all goes into Brinka, where that will be rolled up to, we look at it in terms of teams. and assign them then an overall rating based on, again, the number of tickets and severity. This next slide is here is just an example of a JIRA ticket. So you can see the issue type here is cost optimization, underutilized EC2 instance. We have the component name or the resource ID that just kind of helps teams identify, okay, what resource that we really, that we're talking about. And again, priority, talk about the severity to give teams an idea of how to prioritize these issues. And then some simple other information like the account ID, because like I said, our teams have 2 accounts, prod and non-prod, so then they know which account to kind of go into. So we surface all this data, they get their rating. What's the next steps? So as far as remediating these issues, in the actual scorecard, we have a link to a wiki page or an information page that basically goes through and just explains all of our methodology. We also have in there steps and resources on how to actually optimize costs, and then just tips for being a little more proactive. The next big piece here is just exception handling. We know that there's going to be, that this will come up, for instance, like POC or disaster recovery. So we do have a process in place for that. And then if the appropriate action is taken, so if a team goes in, right sizes one of these resources, or decommissions it, whatever the appropriate action is, our scanner runs on a weekly basis. So in the following week, it won't be detected, and then that ticket will, or finding, I guess, issue will close. So some kind of results, feedback on phase 1. When we launched this in July, to date, we've had over 2,600 optimization findings or tickets that have been created. Of those, 1,600 of them have been remediated. One takeaway that we have from this is we don't have an easy way to really quantify that right now, so that will be something else, that, again, an enhancement or takeaway that we're working on to make sure that we have just an easy way to identify how much we actually saved by these efforts. As part of this kind of rollout, we also have set a goal, or I have set a goal, to make sure that all of our teams are at least a 3-star or above by the end of the year. And we're hoping that through this process, this will encourage teams to be a little more proactive on their cost optimization, both awareness and just making sure that they're taking that into consideration. Tracking on that, actually, to date, we're already up 7%. So teams, you can see there's some progress already being made, that their ratings are getting better. Then again, just key takeaways. I just kind of mentioned one of these, being able to easily quantify the savings from these remediations. And then another takeaway that we've kind of come is just incorporating materiality and also maybe providing insights into the saving, like a dollar value on how much optimization potential is, to help teams really prioritize which tickets or issues that they should really focus on to get the most savings, and where they should put their time. That is all that I have. Is there any questions or feedback, recommendations?
So what was the biggest finding? Was it over-provisioning or